Alright guys, strap in because this is going to be a long one. Right, so Destiny have tweeted saying, our sandbox team has prepared a lengthy list of changes coming with Ash and Iron on September 9th. Grab some water, a snack, and read it here. Guys, this is going to be a big one. So, like they say here, grab some water, grab a snack because, yeah, this is quite a big one. So before I start reading, let's just kind of go into this with an open mind and let's not be too quick to make some judgments here. So let's kick it off. Sandbox tuning preview for Ash and Iron, and I guess some of this means kind of Renegades as well. And actually, you know what? I think it's actually might be Ash and Iron. I think they would be specific about that. But anyway, let's get started because if this is a long one, I don't really want to waste too much time here. But it starts off by saying Ash and Iron is almost upon us and we'll be returning to the playgrounds very soon. Our sandbox team has been prepping a lengthy list of changes coming with our first major update available to all players, which focuses on weapons, perks, exotic armor, and a handful of abilities. Additionally, we have some tuning changes targeted PvP combat, yes please, within the Crucible. Absolutely needed. Let me tell you, I'm very, very excited to see what they say about that. Sandbox can be a complex conversation. Diving deep into the numbers, cones, and mechanics of Destiny is no easy task. We've added notes and explanations to help here, but some changes will make the most sense when you hop into the game and get a feel for how they play in combat. Snag a water, take your time, and feel free to hit us up with any questions. Without further ado, we hand it off to the sandbox team. So we're going to start off with global changes here. Weapon, hipfire reticles. Various hipfire reticles and hipfire reticle elements have been updated with these three goals in mind. The first is to make the reticles properly communicate the weapon's firing performance. Sorry, I'm laughing because literally no one has ever mentioned about the reticle of hip firing, so it's funny how they start off with this. The second is to tone down the visual complexity and or improve the visuals of reticle elements, perk active, pips, and charge meter. The third is to update reticle elements to properly adapt with changes to FOV, bloom, and auto aim, which eliminates situations where they can overlap with each other and in turn allow them to move in closer to the primary reticle. Interesting, never noticed that, but there you go. The positioning of the perk active indicators, pips, charge meters, and text mechanical horns now all have adapt to size changes in primary reticle due to FOV, bloom, and auto aim. Due to this, most of these have also moved closer to the primary reticle. Okay, fine. Trinity Ghoul's perk active indicator has unique positioning due to its split arrow behavior. The pips on Vex Mythic class have been moved to disappear underneath the reticle. Barodiad's pip positioning is untouched in order to keep them aligned with the charge meter and hollow sight. Monte Carlo's perk active indicator is untouched. Okay, fine. Pips now have a more simplistic visual in order to lower overall visual complexity. In addition, pips will now disappear completely unless you have at least one pip. Deterministic chaos pips are untouched and maintain their old visuals since their function is unique on this weapon. Curved charge meters now have the max charge indicator that horizontal charge meters have. Delicate Tomb, Jotun, and Salvation's Grip now use horizontal charge meters. A few changes in their perk active state now use a different reticle that communicates their firing behavior more accurately. So that's Grand Overture, Tessellation, Devil's Ruin, Cryosthesia 77k, and Touch of Malice. Lumina now has the support hipfire reticle when aiming at allies while you have noble rounds. Support framed auto rifles non-healing mode now have a brand new hipfire reticle. Legendary Tex Mechanica submachine gun SMG hipfire reticles now have horns. To maintain a consistent visual and functional language for reticle elements, the pips on Telesto and Traveler's Chosen have now been removed and will be visible only as HUD buffs. Visually, machine gun and fusion rifle hipfire reticles now appear more consistently similar across all weapons within each archetype, regardless of input method. Vex Mythic class is exempt from this change due to its unique firing performance. Okay, fine. So, deterministic recoil. Deterministic recoil, the set pattern by which a weapon shifts recoil direction when being fired, is something we're removing in Ash and Iron. We had a goal when introducing this feature for players to be able to master their individual weapons, knowing just how it would recoil and be able to build to know exactly how it would perform. However, weapons can sometimes feel harder to control or need recoil stat help that is counterintuitive to our in-game display or visual firing patterns. Therefore, we're removing this and we will be looking into other options in the future. We're retaining deterministic recoil on Vigilance Wing. Here we believe deterministic recoil fulfills our goals. Okay, fine. Weapon archetype. Note, we have a larger balance pass on more families of weapons coming in the future, with specific emphasis on the balance between special ammo archetypes and close quarter combat primary weapons, CQB. But there were some high priority items that we wanted to pull forward. Several patches ago, we increased the ADS damage fall-off scalar of heavy burst sidearms from 1.2 to 1.3. While this has been beneficial for the rest of the sub-family, Forgiveness was a bit of an outlier when it comes to the total stat package, and this increased range has pushed it over the top. Instead of reducing the range of all heavy burst sidearms back down, we've decided to target Forgiveness specifically to bring it more in line. So Forgiveness, reduced range stat by 15. Okay, so there's the change there. Aggressive SMG. In the days since Immortal reigned in the Crucible, SMGs in general and the aggressive subfamily especially has received multiple nerfs, leading them to fall far behind other CQB options in effectiveness. In the future, we plan to take a larger swing at increasing SMG ease of use, but for now, we're going to focus on more target change to aggressives, which should allow them to better compete with sidearms and spread shot hand cannons. That's the hand cannons that are reigning supreme right now in the Crucible, actually. Increase ADS damage fall-off scalar from 1.4 to 1.5. Spread shot hand cannons. Here we go. Literally just mentioned it a second ago. While spread shot hand cannons have proven to be a fun new tool in close combat, they are just a little bit too easy to use outside their intended engagement windows. And now they can be frustrating to fight against. Absolutely. It's an easy win for players, to be honest with you. We're going to take a few targeted swings at addressing this friction with accompanying paired abilities tuning outlined later in this article to create a smoother PvP experience. Increase damage versus combatants by 8%, added a 0.1 delay after firing before you can melee to prevent near simultaneous damage events. Increase pellet spread by 5%, reduce flinch dealt to players by 30%, 100%. Yes, it absolutely just needs to happen. And to be honest with you, I actually don't think that that's enough, but they did mention that there's going to be a few bits extra later down the line. Sniper rifles. Snipers in general have fallen off by the wide side in Crucible due to both the difficulty of maintaining ammo and the increased flinch they take versus players. Now that special ammo uptime in general has been reduced, we're going to start looking to bring some of the power back to those weapons. Our first change will help to address their ammo economy, and we are currently playtesting changes to flinch systems that we will release in a future patch. Increase ammo per pickup in the Crucible from 1 to 2. Lightweight shotguns. Lightweight shotguns are currently eclipsed by their precision pellet brethren. Yes, everyone's using their precision now, so we're going to start narrowing the gap in effectiveness between them. This is only our first pass, as we're still playtesting additional changes to give players a reason to run aggressives and lightweights in Crucible. Yes, make way for the others. Like, the problem is, right, is precisions are just too good. It's crazy range. It's easy to aim for the head, and they're just one shots. Like, they definitely needs to happen. Decrease pellet spread angle by 6%. Crossbows, if you have one. I don't. Crossbow bolts now have a heavy ammo radar marker visible only to the player who own them. Updated the weapon tray, ober tray, and kill feed to reflect the crossbow's unique silhouette. Alright, I mean, overall these are positive changes, but yeah, I think we're going to need a lot more than this, I'll be honest with you. Having said that though, we're not even a quarter of the way through. Alright, moving on, we've got featured weapon expansion. Yeah, the featured weapon done my absolute nutting, to be honest with you. The fact that Solipsism, which is the exotic bond for warlocks, the exotic class item actually to be more specific, the fact that that wasn't a featured thing in the Edge of Fate is insane, especially for the avant-garde. Oh, don't even get me started. In Ashen we'll be expanding the featured exotic weapon list with the following options. They'll benefit from the artifact buff and contribute towards your score with an intent to add more diversity into loadouts. We've also revisited a few of these options to make them a bit more appealing. So, we've got kinetic slot weapons, which is Mitre Multitool, Sturm, and Redacted. That means that we have now confirmed that we are going to be getting an exotic kinetic weapon. Energy weapons, we've got Trinity Ghoul, Berry Bloodline. And then the heavy slot, we've got Redacted, Darcy, Heart Shadow, Sleeper Simulant, and Tractor Cannon. So that also confirms that we are going to be getting an exotic weapon in the heavy slot as well. Very, very exciting. Very excited to hear about the exotic weapon in the kinetic slot, to be honest with you. Mida Multi-Tool. Mida Multi-Tool is a stat monster, but the exotic part of it has unfortunately been left behind as our standards for exotics have evolved. We decided to take an inspiration from its source material, taking a larger swing to raise this closer to modern standards while also seizing an opportunity to incorporate new pairing functionality with Mida synergy weapons. New trait, Mida software package. Getting enough kills with Mida Multi-Tool now provides various buffs and an incremental PvE damage bonus after reaching certain thresholds. So it goes in stages here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So stage 1, 25% faster handling and ADS speeds with 5% being in PvE damage. 15 range and stability on stage 2 with 5% PvE damage. Stage 3 says 15% AA/magnetism ranges, so that's aim assist. 5% cone angle, 5% PvE damage. And then stage 4 says shots detonate on impacts. That sounds really cool. Kills with weapons that have the Mida synergy intrinsic also grant progress towards these buffs. So primary ammo Mida synergy weapons grant progress at a rate on par with the Mida Multi-Tool. On death, you regress to the beginning of the previous stage. The radar while aiming functionality has also been moved to the intrinsic. So Catalyst here says, replace no distractions with a brand new Catalyst. While an enemy is within close proximity and Mida Multi-Tool is in hand, you are granted enhanced radar resolution and improved reload speed, 20 reload stat, 50% reload scalar. This buff lingers for a few seconds after enemies are no longer within close proximity, so Misk here very slightly increased the movement speed bonus. So yeah, overall buff. Maybe this might allow people more legroom to make some builds around Mida in PvE content. I guess we'll just see. Alright, moving on to Sturm here. I used to use Sturm back in Vanilla D1, back in the Red War days. The pairing fantasy of Sturm and Drang is a unique concept, though the output does not feel worth the requirement of 2 weapon slots. It really doesn't. The slow rate of gaining overcharge shots would lead to maining Drang until enough shots were stored, and the requirement to use Drang meant half or more of the time you felt like you weren't running an exotic. We wanted to keep the pairing requirement, so we took a larger swing with Sturm, as well as to help the juice feel worth the squeeze. We're very, very good use of analogy right there, Bungie. Alright, so Sturm and Stress. Rapid kills with Together Forever weapons within 3 seconds of each other now load extra Sturm overcharge slots. Primary arrow Together Forever weapons now load even more Sturm overcharge shots. Sturm overcharge shots bonus damage has been tuned. Previously, this was roughly a 261% damage buff against all combatants and a 78% buff against players. Now values are as follows: 260% against bosses, 280% against mini-bosses and champions, 300% against minors and majors, and 75% against players. That would be really cool to test in the firing range, to be honest with you. In providing Sturm with more opportunities to load overcharge bullets than ever before, we've reduced the maximum Sturm charges to 25. The prior cap of 99 was never very realistic, and at the new limit, players are encouraged to use them as they have them far more often. Alright, so Accomplice here. In addition to existing behavior, Final Blows with Sturm overcharge shots now also increase the magazine capacity of Together Forever weapons until death, capped at 100% of the base magazine. Catalyst says, in addition to the increased stats, Sturm now has a brand new Catalyst. With the Catalyst, kills with Sturm overcharge shots now grant charges that provide a 50% ready and stow speed scalar from Sturm and Together Forever weapons. One stack is consumed upon readying Sturm or Together Forever weapons. That's a mouthful right there. Max 6 stacks. And then we've got miscellaneous here. Lucky Pants now buff the damage of Sturm overcharge shots, but at a lower than normal efficacy. 110% buff stat at a legally modded holster times 10. Increased Sturm's ammo regeneration stat from 30 to 80. Fixed an issue where Sturm overcharge shots were not playing the impact VFX that signify increased damage. A lens flare is now visible on the opposing player's Sturm in PvP, while they have active Sturm overcharges shots, so watch out. Wow, Sturm basically just got an entire rework just there. Oh my god, that is big. Alright, we're almost coming up to about halfway here. So we've got Ariana's Vow. Ariana's Vow was given a small VFX adjustment to bring it in line with other special weapons in PvP. A lens flare will now be visible on opposing players' Ariana's Vow in PvP. Very, very short and sweet. Graviton Spike. Here we go. This is the big one here. I'm going to take a sip of water for this one. Graviton Spike has been quite popular since the launch of the Edge of Fate, particularly in the Crucible, where its performance makes it clear its overcharge modes are a bit too easy to turn on. We don't want to outright stomp this weapon down in PvP or PvE, so we're taking a small swing, placing a stricter timer on both its base trait and its unique catalyst to activate. With the amount of targets in our non-Crucible activities, we found that the performance remains nearly the same, but early Crucible playtests have shown that this change reduces the overall frequency of those high-powered fire modes enough to give this a bit more counterplay. Reduce time to gain overcharge shots from 20 to 7 seconds. Okay, that's really good actually, because yeah, this was way too long. Reduce time to gain temporal alignment catalyst buff from infinite to 7 seconds. Yes, I also agree with that as well. Oh my god, hopefully this does kind of bring it a little bit more in tune. Hopefully, we'll see. They're obviously going to keep tabs on it, right? Taraba. Long ago, when zoom changed damage fall-off distance, we reduced the zoom on Taraba to stop it from being a menace in the Crucible. Now that is no longer the case, we began the process of walking it back and are now returning it to its original value. So we've increased the zoom to 16%. Taraba with Ravenous Beast active in addition to the Peacekeeper's damage buff was proven to be an extreme damage outlier. We want to make sure it stays very strong so that the high investment and need for close range remain worth it. But the top end combined damage needed to come down a bit, particularly to maintain fair competition in our raid and dungeon activities. So they've reduced the Peacekeeper's bonus damage when using Taraba with Ravenous Beast active from 100% to 70%. So it's about a 30% nerf just there. Alright, Hawkmoon. Again, this looks very short and sweet here. So Hawkmoon was given the same treatment as Stern by allowing Paracausal Shot, Kaka, to benefit from Lucky Pants. Lucky Pants now buffs the damage of Paracausal Shot, but at a lower than normal efficacy, 50% buff at a legally modded holster times 10. There you go. New Land Beyond. New Land Beyond's perk counter, previously capped at times 100, now stacks up to 999 for bragging rights. Increased damage is still capped at times 1. That's fucking hilarious. Okay, brilliant. Was that needed? Probably not, but there you go. There it is. Lord of Wolves. LOW is definitely a popular one still. Still probably one of the main high DPS for bosses when it comes to shotguns and things like that. Lord of Wolves has been a consistent part of loadouts in our raid and dungeon encounters for a while now. We're making an adjustment to let it remain at a powerful option, but also encouraging a bit of diversity when dealing with our most challenging bosses. Decreased release the wolves damage versus bosses by 20%. So rather than just buff everything else, they're just nerfing Lord of Wolves. I still think Lord of Wolves is going to be a really viable option. Grand Overture. This thing actually gets banned from raids, but here you go. In a long damage phase, particularly for our raid encounters, few other weapons are able to compete with Grand Overture's total damage. I rarely see this gun used, so it's so interesting that they say that. Ideally, we'd like it to shine when players put in the effort to prep a missile barrage before a damage phase instead of being one of the best options even with no preparation. This pass will rein in Grand Overture slightly and give it a bit more space to entertain other options for specific raid encounters. So they've reduced the total reserves from 58 to 48. And the catalyst here, Omega Strike micro missiles no longer require direct hit kills for enemies to explode. Enemies killed by its blast radius will also now trigger the explosion. Okay, so there's kind of a buff then really, I guess. Queen Breaker. Since its rework in episode Heresy, by the way, fantastic episode, for consistent damage, that's basically all we were using in the dungeon, particularly for raid and dungeon boss encounters. We're tapping it down some to bring it more in line with other similar easy to use options to make it a bit more space for other weapons in those fights. Alright, reduce damage versus bosses by 8% and reduce decreased charge rate via combat sites by 15%. So nerf. They've nerfed it. They've nerfed it a little bit. Again, we'll see how viable it is. It's going to be one of those things that we kind of just test out in the firing range. But there you go. Queen Breaker is going to be falling behind a little bit. Outbreak Perfected, Barrow Dyad, and Hierarchy of Needs. The triple threat here because Barrow Dyad is very strong and heavily underrated. Outbreak Perfected is pretty much viable in any type of content that you do, especially when you put rewind rounds on the fucking thing. It's very, very good. These weapons are currently significant outliers in terms of super energy generation, 100% they are, particularly during raid and dungeon boss damage phases. A core part of their exotic identity is creating seeking projectiles for additional damage, but the projectiles are creating some issues with super tuning. So, we want to tune that down instead of nerfing the weapon's damage output when it's ultimately not the issue's culprit. Yeah, that's true. You really actually don't really need to do much with it. I actually think it's fine. So, Outbreak Perfected, reduced damage base recharge super contribution. Okay, fine. Slightly reduced nanites damage base recharge. Okay, so it's basically just nerfing the amount of damage you recoup from doing the damage. However, the damage is still the same. So, that's actually pretty good. I don't want them to touch Outbreak too much. Biodiad, slightly reduced damage base recharge rate. Okay, so it's the same here. So it's literally the same. Reduced damage. Okay, fine. And Hierarch needs reduced damage base. Yeah, it's the same again. So it's just a slight nerf. It basically just doesn't give you as much super energy back. But again, we'll just have to see what it's like both before and after. Maybe someone can do like a before and after video. Who knows? Maybe I might even do that. We'll just see. Alright, Thunderlord. We discovered an issue with Thunderlord's exotic catalyst, which was causing lightning strikes to refill more ammo than what was required to activate it. So we fixed this. Fixed an issue with the Thunderlord catalyst where it was refilling more ammo than intended. Short and sweet, nice and easy. Whirling Ovation launched asking too much of players to really make the weapon shine against bosses. These changes should allow it to shine in a variety of damage rotations, while maintaining the promise that dealing more damage for other weapons will always result in anticipation building faster. So increase the rate of which anticipation builds. A fairly optimized damage rotation utilizing Whirling Ovation should see the anticipation meter fill time decrease from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. Less optimized damage rotations will see a more significant fill time decrease. Okay, that's standard, I guess, right? Weapon perks. So we've got Burning Ambition. We're overall very happy with how Burning Ambition is landing, but this perk used some fancy new tech to make it easier for us to build and maintain these kinds of perks. And in some cases, the enhanced version of the perk would not provide a decrease in number of shots to activate. So, time to activate threshold reduced from 2.5 to 2 seconds. Enhanced time to activate threshold reduced from 2.25 seconds to 2 seconds. Magazine base hits activation threshold reduced from 60% of the magazine to 55% of the magazine. Enhanced magazine base hit activation threshold is unchanged at 55% of the magazine. When calculating the lower of the above thresholds, the perk no longer rounds down. Enhancing this now reduces the hits to activate by a flat 1 hit. So that's actually pretty good, right? Enhanced perk improvements. When we were initially developing enhanced perks, we had a strong vision around what they could be. Now, with the new system implemented alongside so many new enhanced perks, we feel more comfortable revisiting some old perks and granting them greater benefits to align them with fantasies they are trying to deliver more. With that in mind, the following perks have had their enhancement benefits adjusted. So Dragonfly, removed the plus 5% reload speed, added plus 10% damage to the explosion. That's great. The more damage, the better, right? Cluster bombs, removed the plus 5 blast radius, added plus 10% damage to each cluster bomb. Again, really like that. Reservoir burst, removed plus 5 stability, added plus 10% to enhance shot damage. Again, that's really good. Removed the plus 5 reload speed from Magnificent Howl and added the plus 5% damage to each enhanced shot. Again, I mean, these are all just obviously really good. Eye of the Storm, removed stability, added plus 10% effectiveness to all of Storm benefits. Flash counter, removed plus 5 inventory size, added plus 1 second to disorient time. That's not that, it's not that juicy. Chain reaction, removed the plus 20 inventory size and added the plus 10% damage to the explosion. That is really cool. I have a lot of rolls with chain reaction. In fact, I have a lot of rolls with Headstone and Chill Clip and Hatchling. So let's just see what they say. Remove plus 5 stability for Headstone. Added new behavior. Precision kills always generates a large stasis crystal. That's really cool. Chill Clip, remove plus 5 stability. Added new behavior. Players can now create slowing detonations from a lower percentage of the magazine. That's really cool. I like that. And Hatchling. This is going to be also really cool to see with the Warlock update that we're getting, especially around Hatchlings. So they've removed the plus 5 handling. Added new behavior. There is a chance to generate 2 Threadlings instead of 1. Okay. I mean, yeah, great. I wonder how often you can make that happen with enhanced hatchling, right? All right, moving on to weapon mods. Temporal Blast. As we updated perk damage scaling with explosions in the Edge of Fate, we missed updating Temporal Blast to this philosophy, leading to a number of instances where this mod provides a wealth of extra damage, particularly on explosive weapons. To make more space for some other seasonal mods in builds, we want to bring this down just a bit. No longer gains progression on splash damage, reduce blast damage impulse by 66%. So note here, these changes in tandem on average increase shots to ready the explosion by 1 to 2 trigger pulls. They also reduce damage of the blast when caused by heavy weapons dramatically more than special / primary weapons, e.g. 75% nerf when used with crossbow or rocket, but only 23% with a rocket pulse. Fine, so again, it's just some balancing tuning there. Oh god, exotic armor tuning preview for Ashen Iron. Let's see what this looks like. Alright, so featured armor expansion in Ashen Iron will also be expanding the featured exotic armor list. There'll be benefit from the artifact buff, providing additional damage, resistance, and contribute to your overall score. To encourage some new build crafting selections, we've tuned a number of these additions. So Hunter, young Ahamkara Spine and Frosties. Titan has Stronghold and Hazardous Propulsion. And Warlock has Chromatic Fire and Controverse Hold. Alright, so we've got some Titan stuff here. Titan. In Ashen Iron, we're reworking the exotic Stronghold arm. For a while now, they provided immense defensive benefits, but those benefits rarely prove to be valuable to players outside of niche situations. We're redistributing the power that this exotic provides to make build crafting with it more interesting, doubling down on the tank fantasy to make moment-to-moment decisions more engaging. Perfect Guard HUD buff now appears as a bar and stacks no longer drop off after 10 seconds of blocking damage. They persist until they are spent. That's really cool because it doesn't make it feel like you're rushing around anymore. Blocking larger amounts of incoming fire gains stacks at a lower rate, while blocking lower amounts of incoming fire gains stacks at a faster rate. Landing a direct hit on a light or heavy sword attack consumes 50% of your perfect guard charge, exhausting enemies hit and instantly healing you and nearby allies. That's going to be cool in some endgame content right there. Landing a sword hit while at max perfect guard stacks will now fully refill your sword energy instead of offering an infinite guard duration. This enables back-to-back heavy stacks or allows immediate ability to block again. That's really cool. Now that it fully heals you and nearby allies, it no longer grants restoration. Well, that just makes sense, right? Gradually gain up to plus 50 guard resistance and plus 50 guard endurance based on the number of perfect guard stacks instead of the previous plus 100 guard resistance, meaning you'll be able to build craft with your sword perks a bit more to maximize your defensive or offensive prowess. Gain 30% damage resistance for 1.5 seconds upon exiting sword guard instead of gaining resist times 4 while blocking. This is now a generic source of damage resist and can stack with other source of resist. Okay, fine. Walking speed while guarding with a sword is now increased when moving in all directions instead of only forwards. That's obviously a benefit here. Alright, hunters. Fucking hate hunters. Alright, we've got this. I can never say this properly. Criterakians. You're going to have to just bear with me on that facade. Withermel is a strong buff, but without a means for regaining health. Strand Hunter struggles to stay in the fray. Does it though? This change to the base exotic aims to increase some of that survivability, while Withermel is active will now also return health on defeating an enemy. Okay, sure, fine. Again, doesn't really bother me too much. Unintended patch note, relativism. While updating that word, we began to investigate some adjustments to the Spirit of that word perk to balance it a bit against other options on the exotic class item. We conclude this change was premature, but we were unable to fully remove the change before 9.1.0 was locked. While we intend to revisit the effectiveness of this perk in the long run, we'll be rolling back the following change to the Withermel timer in our next available patch. So Spirit of that word. Duration of Withermel provided reduced from 10 seconds to 6. This will be reverted in our next available patch. Fine. And now we've got my class. Warlocks. Please don't, please don't, please don't. Alright, Chromatic Fire. Chromatic Fire is an exotic that ostensibly should be used with a variety of subclasses and weapons, but in the reality of the current design is only useful on certain subclasses with a subset of kinetic weapons. We're reworking it to be less dependent on your subclass, to be useful, and to be functional with all kinetic weapons. Yes. All. So detonation radius on precision kinetic final blow has been increased by 36%, no longer applies keywords based on the equipped super. Non-precision kinetic final blows also produce a detonation. That's really cool. The radius of this detonation is dependent on how many recent elemental final blows the player has achieved. I wonder how much that stacks up to. That's really, really cool though. Controverse Hold. I used to use this back before the stasis days. Controverse Hold should have been a big winner with the stat rework, but ultimately it failed to shine in the Edge of Fate. we're buffing the energy return, tuning it by grenade type to be aligned with how quickly the grenade cooldown lasts, and giving it a bit of a buff by providing weaken. Oh, that's really good. Freeing up some likely space in the fragment selection when using this exotic. Man, the Contraverse hold days back with the, what was it called? Oppressive Darkness. So good. Charged grenades will now apply weaken. Kind of reminds me of Oppressive Darkness right there. Energy returned has been tuned per grenade type. Vortex grenade gains increase slightly but can no longer activate twice. Axiom bolts, handheld supernova, and scatternade gains all received moderate increases. These all sound great for me. Oh my god, there's more Hunter stuff? Okay. Oh wait, no, it says here, ability tuning preview for Ash and Iron. Oh god, is Warlock here? Oh, it's just Hunter. It's just Hunter, yes. We've already detailed most of the ability changes coming in Ash and Iron in our Warlock tuning preview and our class identity write-up, but here are a few more we haven't talked about yet. They literally just mentioned Hunter here. I wonder what they're going to be talking about when it comes to Titans. But anyway, so Gambler's Dodge. In the Edge of Fate release, we changed the melee energy return from Gambler's Dodge to scale on the melee stat and no longer require dodging near an enemy. We're bringing back the dodging near enemies, yes please, behavior to double down on the amount of energy you got while rescaling the stat bonus. This change brings back the gamble by allowing you to get close to enemies to double your reward. While addressing Crucible feedback about Hunter melee spam, fucking hell yes, literally, Tempest Strike, fucking knives, oh man, don't even get me started. In PvE, having 50 melee stat and dodging near an enemy will now give you a full melee charge, and at 100 melee stat, dodging near an enemy will grant 2 melee charges from multiple charge abilities. So rescale the amount of melee charge generated by Gambler's Dodge from 100% at 70 stat points to 100% at 100 stat points. Dodging near an enemy now doubles this amount. Reduce the amount of melee energy generated in PvP. Note, the amount of energy generated in PvP has now been reduced by only 20% in this patch, but in patch 9.1.0.1 it will be reduced again by the full amount at 50. So a second nerf is incoming for the Gambler's Dodge. I'm very excited for that. I can't stand Hunters, and you're all disgusting. Lightweight throwing knives. Here's the next thing that's been causing an issue, and here's the thing, right? You Hunters can cry and cry all you want. Very clearly, Bungie see it is an issue as well, otherwise they wouldn't be doing this. We've received strong feedback, you Hunters out there, strong feedback, that lightweight throwing knives are frustrating to play against in the Crucible. We're reducing their damage versus players and will continue to monitor their performance. Reduce damage versus players by 16%. That is not enough, and it needs to be more. General, so Woven Mail. In order to fix this issue with Warlock's new Weave Walk behavior, we're making a change to Woven Mail application to make the duration no longer reset to the original Woven Mail source's max duration. Now, when you proc Woven Mail, the duration will be the longer of these two options, the current time remaining or the new source's max duration. So Woven Mail application no longer resets duration to original source duration. Okay, I understand that. So stats here. We're still working on the kinks of our new stat systems, and we've made some changes to smooth out the experience. But first up, we're making stats no longer increase damage against yourself. Stat damage bonus no longer increases self damage, okay? So next, we're making the super stat the only stat that buffs your super damage. It's cleaner and more consistent this way. Yes, that means people are just not going to constantly be speccing in 200 stat for weapon and 2-tapping with weapons that should just never 2-tap. That should have just been a thing from the very start. Thank you very much. Melee and grenade stat bonuses no longer apply to melee and grenade stat done while in super. Super stat continues to increase melee and grenade damage in super. We've also fixed the technical issue that was causing the class stat to only increase the benefits when you hit a multiple of 10, fixing the issue where the class stat energy benefits were not scaling smoothly between increments of 10. Finally, we have a fix for mods and perks that increase players' mobility. Corrected an issue where the upper end of the mobility stat benefits was set too low, resulting in mobility boosts like athletic mods appearing to grant less mobility than intended. I'm fairly sure someone even made an entire spreadsheet on this stat with how wrong it was. But yeah, anyway, finishing up here. We're looking forward to getting these ability changes in the wild. In addition to these changes, we're also shipping some Warlock buffs that we mentioned in last week's vid. Very excited for that because I'm a Warlock main. Hunter and Titan buffs will be coming later in 9.1.5 October release, okay? That's it from the Sandbox team for upcoming Ash and Iron changes. We will be watching launch and ingesting all the feedback that comes our way from these changes. See y'all in the Plaguelands. And that brings me to my final conclusion here, because this is a long video and I really don't want to waste any more time from you guys that is already necessary. But we have got some updates coming for the Plague Lands next week for Ash and Iron, literally right before it releases. And finally, some more information on the upcoming expansion, Renegades. So stay tuned for that, guys. I overall think that this is a positive change, that we already know that they're reverting a lot of the changes that they mentioned in the previous TWID, which absolutely got Bungie in a whole sticky situation. But pretty much everything that they mentioned in this blog post right here didn't even really mention any of the stuff that they were reverting back. And that's actually quite a positive thing, because if they're not talking about any of the stuff that they already have told us is being reverted, everything here is just an extra bonus, right? This is even more good stuff. So I think this is good. A lot of these changes are needed. I actually think that they haven't nerfed hunters enough, to be honest with you. But again, we'll test that out when Ash 9 actually properly comes out. But nevertheless, guys, I ultimately want to hear from you. So let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, guys. If you haven't already, you can join the Discord. A link to that is in the description. You can talk to me there, or you can follow me on Twitter and talk to me there. It's entirely up to you. The links are all in the description, guys. But if you don't want to do any of those things, that's still fine, because we've got a comment section. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section, guys. And I cannot wait to just see what happens in the Plague Lands and what happens in Ash and Iron. I'm very excited for it. Hopefully Bungie pull their finger out a little bit. We need an absolute banger, because things just aren't looking too good nowadays. But yeah, guys, anyway, thank you so much for your time today, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.